So Kelli and I go like fucking way back, well, 6 years ago. So Kelli was nice enough to fly out from New York, we met each other at a Butch conference, because of course. And I was performing there, and she was performing there, and she was like, hey, let's do something. I was like, all right. So I planned my first Pride show in Portland 6 years ago, and Kelli headlined, knowing me not at all. And I'd never done that big of a show before. It was a Curious Comedy. We had 2 sold-out shows. And I'd never done that big of a show before, and she was nice enough to come and headline it. So she's my favorite person in the world, so just FYI. She's been on Showtime, she's been on Discovery, she's a 2015 champion of Change in the Wilds. Please welcome Kelli Dunham!
What? Come on, front table. Cake for these seats. That was her, not me.
So Belinda threatened to kill you, but once she gets off stage, all of a sudden your mouth is wide open.
Oh, she's out now.
But that's actually not my style, but I know, people think, this hairstyle implies a toughness that I do not have, right? I'm not a handy butch. As you can see, I'm not a dandy butch. I can be that candy butch, maybe. So, Belinda made me want to tell mine. Actually, Belinda, you know what you didn't say? Is that I performed my first set topless.
Yeah!
How did that happen or why?
You said if I sold out.
Right, I said if we sold out that I would perform topless. What's amazing thing is half of it was full of gay men, and they're like, we don't want to see that much tits, really. Also, I have humongous, long, I have weight, my weight has varied 100 pounds. So I have tits that basically look like a tube sock with pennies at the bottom, And I love my tits like that. I'm not saying bad shit, I love my big, saggy, tits. In fact, somebody was saying talking about top surgery and the pressure to get top surgery, and I was like, really, nobody's peer pressuring anybody into top surgery. I'm 48, you could peer pressure me into getting an IRA, that might happen. But it's not going to be that. Yeah, so I performed topless for no reason really at all. I also performed, so I have 4 or 5 performing naked stories, because I've been doing this a really long time. And in almost all of them, I was accidentally naked. That was pretty intentional, but not, I think it was more or less intentional. But I also have performed, actually last month in New York, I did a naked comedy show. And it's not supposed to be sexy, which, awesome. But I just assumed it would be more like this, where you guys are kind of far away and there's lights. And it was on one of those things that New York calls a performance venue, but it's really a cellar. I actually sat on a keg while I was waiting to go on. And the people, so it was very, very tight, and also so dirty I didn't want to take off my clothes until I actually got on stage. And the folks who were on the front row literally could have reached their hand out and touched me. Somebody could have done a path exam if they had And the person who went on before me was 29, and she took off all her clothes and proceeded to go through every bit of her body and talk about what she hated. And she was 29, so her tits sagged maybe that much, right? And so I was like, oh, and I will come up and have a very different kind of body and tell you how great and awesome it is. Yeah, she was talking about having something about her body was fighting with, her boobs had a fight with gravity and they lost because they sagged that much. And I'm like, I'm not fighting with gravity, I'm participating with gravity. Fuck that shit, life's too short to fucking fight with gravity. We can't even win the fight with the races. I'm not gonna fucking fight gravity. Or when people talk about I was on this date and this woman said, we went to order and she's on the paleo diet, which I don't know if you know, the number one thing about the paleo diet is you lose weight by talking constantly about what you're eating. That's how it works. And she was like, I'm gonna be bad and order fries. And I'm like, no food on its own is bad. Well, kale is bad. But no food on its own is actually bad. Unless your french fries were cooked in a human head, there's nothing inherently bad about That's comic hyperbole, just saying. Or like that's gonna be a thing in Portland, an all-brunch restaurant that that cooks French fries in a human head.
Right?
So you guys, Portland, and you know I lived here for a couple years. And one of my things, thank you. One of my things I really enjoyed doing was picking up flyers at co-ops and coffee shops and just reading them on stage because I didn't even need any commentary, right? Like for example, I have one here on becoming a certified dog walker. There's 27 different points of what you can learn about walking a dog. And there's a test at the end. I once picked up a flyer on Alberta that was for walk-in dog Reiki. So I guess that's like if your dog is really, really busy, like he's coming from doggy chakra massaging and doggy ear candling, and he doesn't really have time to make an appointment, so he just needs to do walk-in Reiki. And also, do you know what the main thing of Reiki is? You know the movement of Reiki? It's just like this. There's nothing a dog wants more than for you to almost pet them. So I was gonna tell my naked stories, and then you guys distracted me with by sitting there quietly. So one time I performed it was like a women's festival, but not a fucked up women's festival. It was called Sister Space, which is the least creative name for a women's festival ever. Like it'd just be like, if we just called this Booze Place. I mean, look, ours not so much better actually, but so it's called Sister Space, and because they were having low budget, I was the headliner, but I was also the MC. So I like, and now Kelli Dunham, and then I had to run to another mic and introduce myself. So I did that, and I performed, and then my friend who was coming on stage to do something said, "Hey Kelli, can you give me a hand?" Now, even though I'm not a handy butch, when somebody asks me for a hand, usually they have the idea that I'm going to be like carrying something or lifting something or, you know. So I said yes. But then what she actually wanted was, she had done like a burlesque class earlier in the day, and she had invited all the women who were at Sister Space to come and strip on the stage, and she wanted me also to strip on the stage to music. To music is kind of an important piece of this. And so everyone came up on stage and started taking off their clothes, and it was like women, you know, of all different ages and body types and all that, and you look like the world's biggest fucking spoil sport, right? If everyone is taking off your clothes and you're like, I'm sorry, I can't. So I started taking off my clothes and folding them up and neatly putting them beside me. And apparently that's not actually that's actually not stripping. Apparently throwing your clothes is really an important part of it, right? Like, you can't just... So, I threw my clothes the way I know how. From softball, obviously. So I took my shirt off, folded into a ball, out into the crowd, overhand, of course. And I was thinking, why is everyone throwing their clothes underhand? Wow, like they didn't go to softball camp, I guess. You know, I was feeling very superior in my stripping abilities, in my newly acquired stripping abilities. Until the music stopped, and everyone started scrambling for their clothes, which were nearby because they had thrown overhand. My clothes, because I had thrown overhand, were like 30 and 40 yards away. And I realized, oh, it's not even about the sexiness, it's about the trajectory. This is the problem. So I scrambled around, and what I could find was one brown sock, which I put on, because I'm sexy like that, and it's a good look. And I was like, fine, I'll just perform for the next, introduce the next act and be able to run off. Just be a quick thing. I'll just be a girl with a guitar or something like that. So the next act was Bitch and Animal when they were together, and they had like a 27 drum setup. So it took 30 minutes. And the whole thing was the audience was paying great attention. They were not distracted, but I was. So what I did was, the all the material I had already done, but with one boob talking to the other. Which is the only time ever that a knock-knock joke has been appropriate on the stage. So that's clapping for not doing a knock-knock joke. So I was thinking about this when Tuesday happened. And I was thinking about talking to people and how, you know, the important conversations that happen, that could happen or have happened or sometimes happen. I mean, you know, I spent 30 minutes today arguing with my volleyball coach from Bible college, you know, like those kind of conversations. But I had this idea a couple years ago, and I think I'm going to have to reenact it. I went on a 10-day, 39 hours on the bus comedy tour of the rural southern states. I don't die in this story. Compassionate Portland was like, does she die? Do they die? I don't know her pronoun. Because making a bad ideas a reality is kind of my forte. And also I have this problem where everything is a good memory for me, right? I remember everything positively, like my childhood was awesome. You guys liked every bit of the naked talk, you know, which is fantastic, actually. It's really, really good for mental health, but terrible for decision making. Oh, that was fantastic. No, that sucked last time, too. So anyway, so my first stop on the I'm going to tell people that there's queer people everywhere tour. Well, wait, no, that's, before I even start, I got my very first hate mail. Would you like to hear it? Well, that's so sweet, because you guys are like, I don't know, I think that is homophobic, I don't know what's going on. So, this poor guy's like, can I clap? I don't know if I can clap. I'm trying to, wait, I'm just thinking that. All right, so, I know you're trying, buddy. I admire that, you're here. So I put up an ad on Craigslist in the event section that said LGBT and need to laugh, and then it had the information about the show. And then I got an email back, and it said LGBT and need to laugh, ? Stay the hell away from Nashville, Tennessee. I hate queers. And then it was signed Paul J. Mitchell. He signed his whole name. So I wrote him back, and I said, Dear Mr. Mitchell, I am sorry to hear you hate queers. I understand what you mean. I totally hate Brussels sprouts. However, I found that it works better if I just avoid Brussels sprouts instead of expecting Brussels sprouts to not come anywhere near me. You would not believe how much time this saves me on email. Affectionately, Kelly the comic. And he wrote back, the last thing I need is LGBT affection. So I friended him on Facebook. And like when he tries to unfriend me, then I get one of my other friends to friend him. And so he's had this succession of radical queer friends that he just can't seem to get rid of, no matter what happens. I might show up at his job one day. Does that sound threatening? So one of my first stops, okay, so I took the megabus. So folks taking the megabus, are you familiar with it?
Yes.
It's like a cut rate. Yeah, the comics have taken megabus. Because you can go across the United States for 50 cents. If you don't mind picking up the bus at any random place. Yeah, there's not a bus station really. They slow down and there may or may not be a sign where you're supposed to find them. So we stopped somewhere in a state. And it was like a 7-Eleven or something like that. So I went in with my hoodie on, and my little ball cap on, and I bought a Mountain Dew and some, like a pixie stick or something. And the guy looks at me for a long time, and then when he pushes his change across the counter, he reaches behind him and hands me a card and it was for the runaway hotline. And he's like, here you go, son. And I was like, yeah, I understand. It looks like I'm a 12-year-old boy running away from home. I understand why you think I can handle it. So my next step on my stand-up comedy tour of the rural southern states was Atlanta. Now, like when I perform for nice, pleasant, local lounge groups, you know, like where you guys are all more or less listening in between chats and focus, and we have like a nice straight cis couple, like that's, I don't have to like do as much to get your attention, but sometimes when I perform, first of all, performing for gay men at clubs. Performing for gay men at clubs, like, you know, first of all, there's always that, please don't stop the music, and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, I'm old, please stop the music, please stop. But also, like, I know what I look like. I'm a middle-aged, like, you know, frumpy lesbian. That is like, I am frumpy identified at this point. But I want people to know. I want people to know that, like, I'm making an effort. So I started putting glitter in my hair. It's really easy, doesn't take long, and I've been stealing it from drag queens. And then I got my ass kicked by a drag queen whose glitter I had stolen. And I didn't do that anymore, but it's expensive, and so I started buying it at the dollar store. Have you ever bought dollar store glitter? It comes in a salt shaker, and it's made of metal. It's actually made of metal. So I started like shaking that, and I'm like, but it does not come off. Like it takes like 7 or 8 washings, and you have to use an emery board to get it out of your scalp. So I had a late night show in Atlanta, and I got on the megabus at 6 o'clock in the morning, and a woman takes a long look at me, and she goes, "Are you a clown for children's parties?" And I was like, "No, my name is Kelli Dunham. I'm a queer stand-up comic traveling through the rural South, blah, 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 because sexual orientation and gender identity are 2 different things." And she says, "You should just tell people you're a clown for children's parties." Fair enough, fair enough. My next stop on the bad idea, as my friends call it, the bad idea tour, I stopped in Nashville, Tennessee. In Nashville, Tennessee, I performed at an anarchist theater collective. Have you ever performed at an anarchist theater collective? You know what it is? It was a shed! It was a fucking shed. And it had gotten condemned. I don't even know how you get a shed condemned. But it had like a heavy metal band or something in it, which I don't even know how that happens. And so people were really afraid to come to the comedy show at the condemned shed / anarchist theater collective. But like 5 or 6 people came, and you know who else came? My biological sister. So my biological sister was sitting next to a guy named Sideshow Benny. You know Sideshow Benny? He's been on Penn and Teller's bullshit. Like, he's kind of famous for for hammering nails directly into his head. So not surprisingly, things at the Anarchist Theater Collective started a little late. People complain about the anarchists being disorganized. I'm like, it's in the fucking name. Right? Like, so anyway, so my sister, the accountant, and Sideshow Benny had 40 minutes they had to kill before I came on stage. And I don't know what the hell they talked about, but they're Facebook friends now. My work here is done. So in between, so then I went to Birmingham, Alabama. I performed at a gay bar in Birmingham, Alabama. I bet you didn't even know there was a gay bar in Birmingham, Alabama. And actually the guy who owned the bar was like, "This is the best place in the world to be gay. This is the best place in the world to be gay." And I was like, "Really? Better than 1972 in the Castro?" That was like, and so he was really sweet, and he was going to drive me to Mobile, where I was going to get the next megabus. And so he drove me to Mobile, and as we got there, the place I had to meet the bus was in a check cashing parking lot at 2 o'clock in the morning. I could just see he's like feeling a little like paternal towards me, right? And he's like, "Oh, can I let this person, this girl, this chick, person, can I just leave them in the parking lot? Like, is this gonna be okay?" And then he said something that in 15 years of doing this, I've never heard any had an event producer ask. He said, "Do you want to borrow my gun or something?" Which was an excellent idea, right? You know, I'm from a rural area. I grew up shooting guns, but I haven't done it, and then I know this sounds fucked up, since I was a small child, right? So the chances of me shooting the right person, and then what was the plan afterwards? Was I going to FedEx it back to him? Like, there's left a little bit to be desired as far as a plan. So anyway, so he finally, I persuaded him to leave me off. Bad idea. I don't die in the story. In the Nashville, Alabama check cashing parking lot at 2 o'clock in the morning. And as soon as he drove off, like they were sent from Central Casting, here comes a pickup truck with country music blaring out the windows, and a baseball bat on the gun rack. Right, I don't die in the story. And so the guy runs up, turns the music down, and yells, "Hey! You want to give me a suck job?" And I was like, "What?" Because I was confused, right? Because a blowjob is actually a suck job. But, like, was he also confused, or was he just using the more specifically accurate description of what he was asking me? So I was kind of having a moment where I was like, well, and so finally I said, I am so bad at that on flesh and blood penises. So he rolled up his window and drove away. And I was like, I think I just confused him out of a gay bashing. So that's like my superpower, right? I can sleep anywhere and I will confuse you out of a gay bashing. I just don't know whether to laugh or cry. So between Nashville and Huntsville, there was not a megabus, and so I had to take a Greyhound. So on the Greyhound, it was me and 3 guys who had just gotten out of prison. I knew that they had just gotten out of prison because they got on the bus and went, "Hey, we just got out of prison!" And then they saw me and they're like, oh my God, there's a chick on this bus, there's a chick on the bus. And I was like, oh, I am so sorry that you have been deprived of female companionship for what I guess is a long time. And I am the chick on your bus. I am so sorry, the universe is not fair. Military-industrial complex in addition. Or military prison complex. The bus started to break down a little bit between Nashville and Huntsville, and I had some plans, but I did not have a plan. Well, I had a little bit of a plan for what would happen if the bus would break down. I was going to get on Grindr, right? Get on Grindr and be like, I'm sorry, I know you're looking for a suck job. But there's a frumpy lesbian that needs some help. Anyway, but the guys were actually sweet because they actually really had me. They're like, don't worry, we got you. Like, if something bad happens, like, we're here, don't worry. And I was like, thanks. And they could tell I wasn't completely convinced. So the one guy's like, we're not like those other criminals. We really did it. And that was strangely consoling. That actually did kind of help. So my very last stop on my bad idea tour of the world's southern states. First of all, some backstory. My mom, when I came out to her, ripped up my birth certificate and sent it to me. Right, I know, I'm sorry, Portland, that was hard on you. You perform this at the right kind of bar, they're like, fuck yeah! But the compassionate part, yeah, so she ripped up my birth certificate and sent it to me, which I was complaining about it to my therapist, and I was like, that was so passive aggressive, and she's like, that was aggressive. Anyway, so 10 years, passed, and my mom, I guess she watched a lot of Ellen and maybe got some suck jobs, I'm not exactly sure. But she came around, right? She came around. And so I was like, I was thinking about the Million Moms. Do you know the Million Moms organization? Okay, it's supposedly grassroots. A couple of things. It's not grassroots. It's actually run by the American Family Association. It's not a million moms. It's only like 10,000 or 20,000. And it's not even run by a mom. It's run by the guy from the American Family Association who I believe does not identify as a mom. Anyway, but their big thing is they're like about corruption in the media, which is always about gay people in the media. They're really against gay people in the media. So, but I was thinking about their conference, and I grew up evangelical Christian, I know how to speak that language. I was like, if my mom can come around, they can come around too. I just need to talk to them. I don't die in this story. So I figured, okay, so the best way to really have like good interactions with folks is to go into volunteer, right? So I made a special email address. My real name is Kelli Sue, so I didn't even have to change my name. I made an email address, kellysuelovesjesus@yahoo.com. And I told one of my friends about it. I was like, do you think that's too much? And she was like, no, that's just enough. So, and I was talking on the phone with the woman who runs the Million Moms Conference, and she was like, Kelly, you just said, Kelli Sue, you just have such a sweet, pleasant speaking voice, and I can tell you're so friendly. I was thinking, how would it be for you? How would it be for you if you were the greeter at the conference? And I was like, I know how it would be for me. I just don't know how it would be for you all. So I showed up at the conference wearing the only thing I knew to wear, which was an American flag t-shirt. Exactly this same thing, but with American flag t-shirt. I was like, what? It's what they like. It's what they like. And she got one look at me and she was like, yeah, I think I have a different job for you. So her different job for me was she wanted me to sell books from the speakers. And you know who the keynote speaker of the Million Moms Conference is? Sarah Palin. So somehow that, wearing the flag shirt, showing up at the Million Moms Conference, all that was okay. But that seemed like the line I couldn't cross, right? So I did what any really immature adult would do in that kind of situation. I ran and hid behind a planter for the rest of the meeting. But I wasn't really hiding. To call it hiding is a little bit of a misnomer because it was like the planter was very small and I'm not very small. So it was more like this. It was just symbolic hiding. And I don't know if you've ever had to hide behind a planter at a conservative Christian women's conference volunteer meeting, but it gives you a lot of time to think about your life. And it occurred to me it was not going well. But I bought a ticket, so I just went in, and whenever people had conversations, I would just tell them who I was and why I was there. And one woman was like, do you want to share your testimony? So I was like, yeah, my name is Kelli Dunham. I'm a queer comic traveling through the rural South, blah, 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 because sexual orientation and gender identity are two different things. And she said, oh, so you're looking for Jesus then? And I was like, yeah, we're all just looking for Jesus. That's close enough. But the very last thing that happened at the Million Moms Conference on my rural Southern tour was the keynote speech from Sarah Palin. Now, if you have ever been in a 1990s Anna DeFranco concert, you can appreciate the level of estrogen-fueled enthusiasm that was in the air. She walked out, people are screaming, "We love you, Sarah!" Because I guess no homo was kind of implied. And so I was watching her, as she was talking, and she talks completely in sports metaphors, that? Like, she talks completely in sports metaphors. And she was kind of like, blah, 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 the hockey, the pit bull with the red lipstick, with the, and I was looking at her and I was like, God, she is just so, oh my God, why is she so, and I was like 10 feet away. I said, why is she so hot? Why is she so hot? Why is Sarah Palin so hot? Now, I know it's like hard and people don't want, but I was thinking, if we could just, I could just fist Sarah Palin. And you know what? It wouldn't have to be a whole fist. It could be like 3 or 4 fingers. I just feel like it would make both of our lives really a lot better. I said that at the Trans Health Conference in Philadelphia, and afterwards, the MC apologized for it. And he said, I'm sorry, we really should have given you a trigger warning for that. And I was like, what? Like a trigger warning for fisting Sarah Palin? Because all the other people who had fisted Sarah Palin, when I started talking about it, are going to have a post-traumatic stress episode. That's really true. That's awesome. sports analogies that I had no idea what she was saying. I was like, great, that means Sarah Palin's like more of a butch than I am. So I know we're tight on time, so I'm just gonna close with this little bit of story/advice, which is, if you look like me, and some of you in the room do not go whitewater rafting when there's a Cub Scout jamboree in town. Let me explain to you why. So I was with my friends, thought it was going to be okay at the whitewater rafting with the Cub Scout jamboree. And I was on my way to the bathroom, and people kept interrupting me and asking, "Where is your buddy? Where is your buddy?" Like I didn't know we were the Boy Scouts or if it was like Skipper and Gilligan. I never really buddy. And so I got done with my bathroom stuff, and we got all piled into the boats, and started sailing along. Not sailing. Yeah, I'm really not a giant. We all sailed along. No, we didn't sail along. We barely were even in the water, and the first big wave popped me out, right? And if you could just picture me floating along like this, you can kind of understand why the scoutmaster thought he had to intervene. So he jumped in and attempted to pull me into the boat. And there was this extremely protracted struggle. Because I don't know if you've ever been rescued when you're not actually drowning. But it's a lot of work for both people. So finally he pulled me in, like wet and dripping, and him breathing hard and me breathing hard, and I was down on the floor of the boat, and I looked up at him and he looked down at me, and I looked up at him and he looked down at me, and there was a long silence. Where you realize, oh, he didn't rescue a drowning Cub Scout. He had annoyed an adult female. And you know the Boy Scouts motto is be prepared. He was not prepared for that. And I was not prepared for that moment, because you know where I ended up for the rest of the whitewater trip? In the boat with the Cub Scouts! My friends, many my whitewater rafts yards away. And I don't know if you know this, probably you do because we're in Portland, that an important part of whitewater rafting is using the paddles. But the Boy Scouts were not paddling because they were staring at me. And every time they thought I was looking away, they'd be like, "Why does he have boobs? Why does he have boobs? Oh, boy has boobs. Why does that little boy have boobs?" Somebody's in their boat and it's a little boy with boobs. And then one boy, man, he like screwed up his courage, and I really had to admire this, because he reached over and he touched me on my leg and he goes, "What troop are you from?" I was like, "A drag troop, kid, okay?" That didn't clear it up though. So, it took us like 4 hours to get through the rapids because nobody was paddling. Everyone was just afraid of my boobs. And we turned over multiple times. And at some point, we're just standing in the river trying to bail out our boat. Completely like freezing cold. We don't have any paddles left. And this kid is such a millennial, right? This kid starts crying. He's like, oh my God, I wish this were just a video game I was playing. And I was like, me too, little man. Thank you very much. I'm Kelli Dunham.
Kelli Dunham, everybody!
Hey, tell them I have books and free stickers.
Okay. Okay, so Kelly's also written a bunch of books, so if you want to check out her books, come over here.
And free stickers.
Check them out. And free stickers, so who doesn't love stickers? Also, we have a tip jar over there. It's $5 to $10 suggested donation. If you enjoyed the show, put money in. I ain't gonna pressure you. If you don't put money in, you gotta live with it. So go ahead and do that. And thank you so much for coming out and laughing. This has been really fucking awesome, man. So, yeah.